I really don't want to do this review. It's gonna make me sad. Hello, once again, my fellow weirdos of the internet, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hello. My name is Ray Roddingwell, and I'm a special effects artist, costume designer, character designer, and character actor, and I'm here to talk about my favorite things. Unfortunately, I'm really upset about this video. I did go see the new Gretel and Hansel film, and I don't want to talk about it because it makes me sad, but I'm here to tell y'all how I felt. Unfortunately, they're not good feelings. I went into this really hoping that it would be just this masterpiece. I was really hoping that I would be coming back to review a movie in a more positive manner than I did with The Grudge. If you haven't seen my review on The Grudge, I will leave a link somewhere. Before I get into the storyline and all of that, which, let's be honest, that is really what the downfall of this movie is the storyline. I want to talk about what I did like about it so I can start this on a positive note instead of internal screaming the entire time. So I will say the cinematography is so gorgeous. I really haven't seen anything visually that stunning since The Witch came out, I think like in 2016 or something. But that movie blew my mind with the cinematography. And this movie had that same effect. The colors were really great, the scenery was amazing, all of these camera angles were just like, mwah, like they were beautiful. It was very hypnotizing the way the cinematography was. It was so beautiful. And the witch. Oh, the witch was so cool. Like the aesthetic of it all was just like orgasmic. Like it was just, oh, it was so good. Unfortunately, that's really the only good things that I can say about this film. So I'm gonna go in and talk about the plot. So the story starts off talking about the witch. When she was little, she was really sick, and her family took her to this enchantress who was the most badass thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I want to be her. She was so cool, to get rid of the sickness. And she did. But there was like a switch. Like she replaced her sickness with this magical power. The little girl was causing people to kill themselves. That was her power, and she was pretty evil about it. She killed her father with her power, so her mother sent her back to the enchantress, and she lived out in the woods. And that was they made it seem like that was the story of the witch that we would be coming in contact with later with Gretel and Hansel. So then the story switches over and it goes into Gretel and Hansel's story. Their dad was no longer with them, and it was time for Gretel to start finding work. And the story really is mostly in favor of Gretel, which is why they named it Gretel and Hansel instead of Hansel and Gretel. It's mostly taking place with her as like the main protagonist. She goes to this house to be like a housemaid, and the creepiest man I've ever seen in my entire life is interviewing her and was asking her if she was a virgin. So she was like, Pete. The mom is a little crazy and was like, okay, well, I don't have enough money to feed you guys, so you need to leave. So they dipped out. So, you know, they're just kind of walking around, getting hungry, and they stumble upon some mushrooms, and they eat the mushrooms, and they start tripping balls, which I feel is such a random thing for this movie. Like, it was just, like, I understand they did it because back then it was kind of hard to, like, filter through like what was poisonous and what wasn't, because this was like a very old, like very olden times. I don't know the exact era. If I can find out, I will put it here. Yeah, so they're like in the forest just like tripping like crazy. They keep pushing forward and then they come across a house, the witch's house. The witch opens the door and invites them in and feeds them and cares for them. And she, is kind of talking about asking like why they're there, all of that. And they mention this family that they're supposed to be heading towards. So they end up staying with her. Gretel is doing like the cleaning and all that stuff. The witch starts to realize that Hansel is kind of slowing Gretel down just because Hansel is so young and he's very naive, and Gretel is very mature and wise for her age. The witch starts to not necessarily confess that she's a witch, but she starts telling her about all of these special gifts that she has and says that Gretel also has those special gifts. And so she's kind of almost turning her like into an apprentice with her as far as learning like her magic skills and things like that. And it starts to make Gretel uncomfortable. She starts to wonder like, well, she's in the middle of nowhere. She's super old. How is she getting all of this food, all of these fruits and vegetables and all of this like meat? Like, where is it coming from? Gretel starts to kind of accept these lessons from the witch. And that's around the time that Hansel starts to get uncomfortable. But now Gretel wants to stay because she's like learning about herself and being like independent and powerful. So she's like, no, I don't wanna leave. I don't actually like wanna leave without you. Like, don't make me go by myself. She leaves him and he's kind of like standing outside and he looks out into the forest and sees a little girl. And the little girl takes him. And then after a couple of days, Gretel's like, okay, have you seen Hansel? And like the witch is like, she's like, oh, he's been holding you back. I think it's best if he stays gone. And she's like, no, that's my little brother. Like, I'm gonna go look for him. She knows that the witch has this type of potion to help them fall asleep. So she makes a comment saying that like, can you make me this tea so that I can try to sleep, so that I can have good rest and be ready to go look for my brother the next day. So she pretends to drink it. When she decides that she thinks that the witch has gone to sleep, she goes into this closet. At the beginning of the movie, she found that there was this hidden room. And over time, when she would go into the storage closet to get supplies to clean and stuff, she would kind of pick at it every day. So she went into the room and notices that Hansel is there, just sitting in the corner. And she sees this woman, this younger woman, come out from the wall, and the way they did it was super cool. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's one of the only really cool parts in the movie. She comes in and she's got like this sack, and she dumps the sack, and it's like all of these like organs and body parts and like intestines and things like that. And she uses her power and she turns this into food they would have every day for their meals. Hansel is still missing. I think she's still looking for him. And she's having a conversation with the witch, and the witch is still like explaining to her brother's holding her back, and she has all of this amazing potential and all these powers, and she needs to utilize them, and he was keeping her from being able to achieve her full potential. And then Gretel is making her a drink to get her to fall asleep so that she can escape. And she notices it right away. She's like, you messed it up and it didn't do anything. Like, I can taste that you were trying to poison me. So she ends up telling them about the story of the witch, which is a story that they already knew. And the whole time in the movie, you're supposed to be thinking that this is the little girl, because they don't really give you a time in between the story of when that happened and when the story of Hansel and Gretel happened. You kind of assume that this woman is that witch, that little girl. But here's the kicker. That was the mother. So when the mother had the little girl taken away, the little girl was almost like haunting her and was trying to explain to her she needed to get rid of her children, and she could consume that power, and she could be like this amazing, powerful goddess in a sense. So she ate her 2 other children and took on the appearance of this old woman, but in real life she's this young mom, which I thought was weird. Like, it was almost like they had to add in like some sort of like sex appeal for some reason, which I think was just dumb. I think they should have just like made her be an old woman and not be taking on the appearance of it to make herself look old and weak, and like she wouldn't really, like, there's no way she could be doing anything wrong. She starts to explain to her that like you need to consume your weaknesses, and her brother Hansel was Gretel's weakness. She takes Gretel into I guess it's like a dungeon, like the secret room, and she has her like tied up at the chair, and her brother is in there, and there's this pit of fire and a ladder that goes up to this, it's like a tree house almost, but it's essentially supposed to be for him to sit there, and he like kind of roasts alive, and then she was going to feed Hansel to Gretel. But Gretel starts to use her powers that she has. So there's this like gel that the witch uses that kind of helps give her like certain powers to like move things. They also kind of just graze over that. Like, they don't really explain what that is or why she needs it. There's an airplane. Anyway, so that goo is on Hansel, and I'm assuming it's to kind of hypnotize him to do whatever the witch needs. So she's like, I'll let you go, like, say goodbye to your brother. So Hansel walks over to her, and like Gretel puts her head on his head. Then when he walks away, she's got that goo on her forehead from touching heads with him. So she takes it off and is kind of like rubbing it on her hands. And there's this like, I don't really know exactly what it is. It's kind of like a walking stick, but there's like prongs on it. I don't really know how to explain it. It's like leaning up against a wall, and the witch is commanding Hansel to walk up the ladder to sit and roast. And Gretel is like using her power to try to lift up the stick and like hurl it into the witch, which she does, and the witch is actually like ends up getting like thrown up against the wall that the fire pit is on. And so she starts to cook and she dies, and then Gretel breaks free and goes over to the brother and like saves him before he climbs up to the top. After that, she's kind of like, okay, well, I think it's time for us to go our separate ways. Like, you have your own journey, your own path, and I have mine. And she enchants this horse to take Hansel to where he needs to go. And Gretel stays at the house. And so she's like, oh, you can choose how you want to live your life. Do you want to use your powers for good or for evil? I want to use them for good. And she's like, yeah, I'm gonna use my powers for good. Like, I'm gonna learn everything I can and turn, you know, my powers into something good. And while she says that, she watches her fingers turn black, which was what the witch had, which I thought was such a cool aesthetic, which kind of signifies that like she's like kind of stuck being evil. It's all very like, in my opinion, it's almost kind of like how you interpreted it, but that's kind of the way I interpreted it. So that's the movie. I was disappointed. I really thought that it had so many cool moments, and it was so beautifully done as far as, like I said before, as far as like the aesthetics go. It was just so beautiful and artistically done. And then it was like they put all of their effort into that, and then when it came to like a storyline, it just wasn't there. I was explaining it to somebody else. It's a beautiful piece of shit. That's really it, and it really is. The outer surface of it was so pretty, but then once you go into the core of it, it was extremely boring, and there was no depth to it. It it was just a bummer. They could have had a really cool, gruesome battle between Gretel and the witch, and they really didn't. Nothing very epic happened. I almost wanted to see I almost wanted to see Hansel die. Like, I just wanted there to be like some type of drama to it. I, again, don't think this is really something that anybody should waste their money on. I don't think it's worth seeing, but that's just my opinion. If you saw it, how did you feel about it? Fingers crossed for the next one that I'll end up seeing something good that will have a very positive review after watching it. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoy me and you enjoy my channel, please like and subscribe, leave a comment. You can push the notification bell so you don't miss a single video. I hope you have an amazing day, and I will see you in the next video.